Hey guys, so welcome to another episode of me learning to use watercolours. So those who have not seen the first couple of episodes, I've bought this book and I'm basically using it to help learn how to use watercolours. I've done acrylic painting and oil painting for many years, but I wanted to get into doing watercolour painting and I've dabbled in it, but I've never really learned how to do it. So I bought this book to help teach me how to do it. So we're following along with this. This is a book by Lacey Walker of Rebel Unicorn Crafts. Now, when I bought the book, I didn't realise that this was a YouTuber who done the book. I just saw the book and thought it looked quite cool. But do check out Rebel Unicorn Crafts. They do have some really cool videos. But there's 20 lessons. We're on lesson 3. Now, I was doing this once a month, but I've had people requesting that I do it more often, so we're actually going weekly, hopefully. So today we're doing the Honeycomb one. So if I just get to page 43, I think it was. Yes. Yeah. So this is the lesson we're doing today, and we're learning about how to do the different techniques of wet on wet, wet on dry. Let me just lay that book down because it's causing a shadow. And the different amounts of water you have on project. So they tell us, or she tells us at the beginning, to read pages 14 and 15, which are the paint wetness stages, and wet and dry and wet and wet. And so that section of the book teaches us the difference between the amount of water on the page. So we are going to put those techniques into practice. We have some more step-by-steps to follow along with, so that's what we're going to do. Though I've just realised I haven't taped this down, so if you give me a second, I will be back after I've taped this down. Hi guys, so I've got it taped down. They do recommend taping it down because we are going to be using a lot of water and it's likely to wrinkle and buckle. I also gave my palette a clean because I just realised I forgot to do it. Don't do me, clean your palette as soon as you finish painting. I was very naughty. But anyway, so we're going to follow step by step, and as I said, this is just about learning how paint reacts and interacts with water. So do buy the book to read all of the information she gives. I'm not going to read it out. I do want you to buy this book yourself. I'm not trying to reduce sales for this lady because it's a very good book. So I do recommend. So step 1, we've made sure we've taped it down, which is what she has us do. And apparently we're going to be adding a lot of water to this one, so it's going to buckle, so that's what I just said. So we've got to pick a hexagon. So I'm going to start up here in this corner, I think. I think she starts somewhere in the middle, but it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to start up here and work my way down. I think I'd prefer that. So I'm going to pick up here, and we want to flood this one, so a lot of water. Now, she does have the stages linked, describing them, and the different stages she called, if I just go to the page. So we have dry, sticky, creamy, watery, as the paint wetness is. And for the paper wetness, we have flood, gloss, satin, damp, and dry. So both the paint and the water have different names for how wet they are. So it's important to know what... Oh, look, that's got a little day. Never mind, I'm just trying to spread this into all around. You can probably spot that there was a little colour on my brush there. I did clean it, but obviously I missed a tiny section, but it's okay because it's the colour I'm going to use anyway, so it's not the end of the world. So they want us to flood this one, so it's a lot of water on it. She had a very good way of teaching the different wetnesses, which about what type of shoes you'd wear if you went out in the rain, and the amount of water on the surface ground. So it's a very good way to look at it, and I do totally recommend getting the book and reading about that if you're still learning like me. But yeah, so we're just gonna make sure that this is well and truly flooded. That may have been a little too much, but it's good enough. And then obviously she has used burnt sienna, permanent yellow, deep, quetzalcoatl magenta, vermilion, and yellow ochre. She's used different yellows. So I'm going to use basically these ones here, I think is what I'm going to work with. And a little bit of that one. I have pre-sprayed the thing. I think I could do just a little bit more. And let's put some water in these bits for me. So because we want a lot of water in this. Don't know if she says what paint setting we should be having. Yeah, let's, and then we just kind of dot it around and see how it goes. And I think it's not quite flooded enough. There we go. We're looking for the colours to really spread out. There we go. Possibly gone a little much that way. I didn't take this down enough clearly because it's already buckling. But there we go. Then move on to this one. Pop that in there. A bit darker one. Tiny bit of pink in here, I think. I want to encourage that water in the middle here because it's buckling up, which is my fault. I obviously didn't take this down enough, but again, this is me learning, so this is how it works. You see how the colour is just kind of all blending in, possibly into a bit of a mess for me. What I can do is just grab a brush, try to soak up some of that excess water because I possibly put a bit too much on. But she said she wanted it flooded, so that's what I went with. Again, I'm learning. I will get there. Take that out. But yeah, the point is to show that kind of blurs and floods together. And if you had it taped down properly, it would be more even. But I haven't taped it tight enough, clearly. Oh, look. Good job we're using yellow, isn't it? Is it on my hand? I don't know how I did that. Never mind. So that's the first one, which was the flood stage. Now we're going to the gloss stage. So again, very wet, but not fully flooded. I think that's probably more like that. Let's use the brush to... I haven't even used that brush. Why that's got dark marks on it. Yeah, I'm starting to think when I bought these brushes they weren't particularly clean. They were brand new, but I haven't used that brush, and as you saw that had a bit of dirt on it. They must have picked up something. Just spreading the water around because of course it's sticking up because I didn't tape it down well enough. But we're looking for gloss, so it should be quite glossy and still quite slidey. There we go. And again, you just pick your colours. I think I'm gonna start with a darker colour around here, and then work more of a lighter in the middle. And some of the really light yellow on this edge, I think. Right. You see how the colours are just blending in. That's really pooling there because I didn't get it taped down enough. that is my bad. I don't know if I can tape it any tighter down at this point. It may be too late. So, important lesson already learned. Make sure you really got it taped down quite tight. Because clearly I have not learned that lesson just yet. It's a good job this is all going to have these colours in it. No, just grab a bit off of that because it's quite dire. There we go. I did say this is about me learning. I don't know what I'm doing. This is all the stages. So stage 3, they want the satin stage. I'm gonna go up here. And the satin stage, I want to make sure that brush is clean before I try to spread this water. Satin stage is a lot less water than the first 2 stages, so I want to make sure I only have it so it's just shiny, not too much water on it. So use my brushes to make sure I keep it from being too wet. There we go. I think that's more of the satin stage. And again, we're going with the same colours here. And we just dot it around and see where we get. You can see, because it's still wet, they are still blending, but they're not blending as much as previously. We'd have more control getting lines and things on this than we would with them. With those, we have no control over where anything's going, basically. It's just going to go where it wants to. I'll just have a tiny bit of pink in with that. Obviously, I'm adding more water with my brush. So it's still getting some blowiness. So that's stage 3. Stage 4 is the damp stage. So at this point, I think I'd rather rather than spraying, we're going to go here. I'm literally just going to use my brush to lay water over the top. So it's damp, but it's not hugely wet. So there's not really much of a shine. I mean, it's water, so it's going to have a shine, but it's much smaller amount. And then again, we're just going to pick up water and dot this around. You see how this is pretty much staying where we put it, which is what it's supposed to do. And this gives us more control over where we want it. You see how the lines I create pretty much stay there. If I put a line in, it's not spreading out anywhere. And that, I believe, is the correct thing for damp. It would just putting it on with much more control. Obviously, I've got a little more water on my brush there, which is fine because it means that I can control where it's spreading to. But I have much more control over it. And this is what she's trying to teach us, of how much control you have over the colour if you are wanting to have specific colours in specific places. Like you see, these dots are only spreading a little, and that's because of the water from the previous paint underneath and not much paint on before. So I'm just going to dab them out a little because I don't want too much. But you see how that's, you can see the colour much more set in places than the other ones. Okay, so the fourth stage, that's what we just did, fifth stage rather, is the dry stage. So we're going to keep the paper completely dry, which this section is still dry, so we're good. And that's where we're going to learn that we can have more control. So if I put a point on, I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the yellow, but we can actually create lines and it's not going anywhere. I don't know how well you can see the yellow. Shall I go with a darker colour a minute? Yeah, see how create lines or dots. It doesn't really go anywhere because the only water is on the brush, and so you have full control over what's going where. And it's really cool how different amounts of water on the paper can really affect how it moves, even if the paint is reasonably the same consistency. Because I haven't changed much about how much water is on my brush. I've just changed how much water is on the paper. Now obviously I'm still learning, so I won't have it exactly right, but I can definitely see the different techniques and which one you'd want to use for more control. These ones I think it's going to take me a little bit more practice getting between the flood and the satin and the what was it, flood gloss satin. Those ones clearly I need to work on the amount of water because they work reasonably similar, so I need to practice more on them. But I think I got the damp and the dry. I certainly understand how the methods work on them much better. But yeah, the flood, the gloss and the satin, I think I'll do another set of them to try to understand it. Because step 6 is choose your own adventure, so you just pick them all. So I think I'm going to try down here to recreate those ones and see if I can get them a little more different, because I think I'm still not quite understanding. So let's go with the flood here. Use the brush to spread it to the edges. I wonder if I need to let the water soak into the paper a little bit more and then flood it again, or whether that's enough. I mean, it does seem pretty flooded with just that one lot, so maybe I put way too much on there. What do you guys reckon? I'm happy for feedback. As I said, this is me just trying to understand how this all works. But that actually looks pretty flooded just from that one space. I think maybe I put way too much on the first time round. So let's see if I can get it to spread, but without it's not spreading as much, is it? So maybe it's just not quite enough. What do we reckon? Oh, there does. Okay, so push down a little bit more. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. I just need to encourage the water on my brush to also join in a little more for this stage. Yeah, because that's definitely spreading a little better now, isn't it? So I think maybe that's what it was. I was doing too delicate with the brush, so that meant I put more water on than was needed. Just going to try to encourage that water to flow that way a bit. As I said, it's still sticking up. Is there a trick to getting your paper down enough so that it doesn't buckle? If anyone knows it, please do let me know. What do you think of my paintbrushes? They're quite funky, aren't they? Turns out the points are very handy. Yeah. Okay, so I think maybe for the satin, what we gloss first, wasn't it? Maybe we just, instead of spraying, we just put, I don't know, let's just try half a spray. Should we try? Well, that wasn't much for half a spray. I forget how much this comes out, but let's try that. Definitely less water than last time on it, so hopefully that'll be alright. Still definitely a glossy stage. It's definitely still spreadable. Yeah, slightly more control where it's going, but it's still blurring out it at its own accord, which, as you can see with the lighter cut, the magenta is easier to spot. Possibly got a bit much water on it there because of my brush, but never mind. Maybe muddying the colour a little there, but we'll see. Okay, so now we're just going to do damp on here, so just use my brush to do it. So damp and spreads a little, but not a huge amount. You think we got it a little better this time round? Yeah, I think we're doing a little better this time round. I think I definitely had too much on last time. This is spreading, but it's not uncontrollable, you know, which I think is what's supposed to be on damp. Yeah, that gives, and then we'll do dry down here. So, of course, this is dry paper, not necessarily dry brush. I don't think we had too much problem with the dry. I think we've got the dry pretty well sorted. But if you remember from my previous ones, like the mountains and that, I was struggling to get it to blend how I wanted, and I was doing it purely with water on the brush, not water on the paper, because that's what the lesson was. And I think it was actually a good step up, because that shows how sometimes the water on the brush is what you use and sometimes it's the water on the paper to blend things. And you can also see the colour difference where I've gone quite a watered down paint mix there. It's much more subtle than the direct from the paint itself. I think that's definitely getting the hang of it better, I think. So I think, yeah, the flood is definitely one for covering large areas and just flooding the paper with a background colour that you want to blend. And I think the gloss is a really good one if you want more colour separation but still to fully coat the background, I think. Whereas I think the satin would be really good for things like maybe clouds and things, or I can't say it, Northern Light stuff, where you want some blending but you want also good amount of subtle colour. Whereas this dry, definitely much better, say if you were doing trees or flowers or person or something where you needed more control, the dry is definitely the way to go. So this is the really good way to teach me how the amount of water on the paper really affects how you're painting. Because if I do a dry but really puddle up the water on my brush, let's do a darker colour so we can see, mix some of that in. So I've really got quite a lot of water on my brush there and do it dry. We still get pretty good control, and if I wanted it to blend, I'd really have to force that water down into the paper with forcing the water out of my brush. And it gives more of a, I think, a more of a muddy look. It's not by forcing my brush to do the spreading. It's much harder to get a less harsh line look. See how much harsher it's looking for me just using my brush to do it, and I think it's muddying the colours more, I think. Whereas the colours still stayed nice and bright here. I think here just looks much muddier because I've had to force those colours together, and as you can see at this point I'm actually lifting some of the colour off because I'm forcing my brush down into it. So even with a lot of water on your brush, you're not going to get the same effect as if you've done the flood, satin or gloss stages. You can see I did use a lot less water on these stages because they're already starting to dry out much better than those ones are. So I think I did use too much water there, but I think we did much better on these stages. Though I do quite like that one. I think that one probably should have been more this sort of stage. I think I had too much water for the damp stage, and I had way too much on the flood and the satin gloss stage. I think the satin wasn't too bad. This still got a little muddy, but I think that was a me issue. But I think we've done quite well. I think it's really helped see different ways the water and the paint interact. I think I'm just going to casually spray the rest of that paper, not in a real care way, and just add some colour on, not really caring what we get, just to see how just a casual spray over the water affects what we get. See, like that definitely got a lot more water in that area. And yeah, you see up here is almost fully dry, even though I sprayed over it. So I think you definitely have to be attentive to where you spray your water to make sure you get it exactly where you want it. Just gonna take some of this and move it into these drier areas. Yes, I think definitely have to be careful where you're spraying and how you're spraying, which is really good. It's really good to know that you can't just spray willy-nilly and think you're good, because it definitely doesn't work like that. And definitely with the dry bits, when I'm forcing the water onto it, you can just see how they're not really blending, they're just kind of mixing. And mixing and blending is two very different things, because we want the blend to have the colours still show, but they kind of meet nicely together, whereas mixing is more of giving the entire thing a whole new colour by mixing them together, if that makes sense. That's how I see it when it comes to painting and colour mixture. Let's get some of the brighter yellow back in here. But yeah, you can really see how this is affecting the paints. I definitely think the dry will only be used when I'm trying to do delicate areas. I like the way damp paper moves the watercolours around, and that's kind of what I wanted more from watercolour. If I wanted detail, I could have stuck with my acrylics or my oil paints, whereas I wanted to get this more blended background for some of my work, which is why I wanted to try watercolour in the first place. And I think I now understand how to get the looks that I want from just changing how much water is on the paper, which is exactly what the lesson's supposed to teach. So it's done a really good job. I think she explained it really well. And once I understood a little bit more about how much water to get to those stages, because these ones I think came out much better than these ones. That one's still quite mixed, but I think I put a lot more magenta in that one. I'm just gonna pat over or paint over these dry ones just to kind of blend it in a little more, because I don't really like that look. Can't reactivate it as such. They're dried on there now, but I can definitely hide them a little. And there we go. So that was today's lesson, and that's about how the water works on the paper. And I'm actually really happy with the way that's gone. I think I understand a lot more now how the water on the brush versus the paper changes what you're going to get here, and I think it's gave some really different definitions. So I'm happy. So what do you guys think of that? And what do you think of me about going weekly instead of monthly with these lessons? Because I know several people had messaged or commented about when the next one was going to be, so I've upped them. But let me know. But that's it for now. Next week's lesson is Marvelous Mountains. So we will be doing these sort of mountains. Mine obviously will not look like it, but Marvelous Mountains is what we're doing next week. So do check back for that. I think I have these coming out on Fridays. Pretty sure it's every Friday from now on. So check back next Friday for the next one. But I will see you all soon. You'll take care. Bye.